Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
This is awesome. I love when Twitter world meets real world. It's nice to see something besides. Well, we look the same almost. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Come on, Matt. Matt, you got to shave your head. Well, first off, Matthew, thank you. We've never met. It's always been through DMs and talks. And this is my partner, Matt Huffnagel. Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
You're our first international guest, not to ramp things up. But.
No, it's good to talk to some fellow fathers, really, I suppose, and just maybe have a chat about those things and what comes with it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So my daughters are 23 and 22, and you know, so I'm on the other side of it. Matt's daughter, she's
23. She's 23. She'll be 24 here in June.
Okay.
You're in the thick of it a little more than us, right?
Yeah, I have a 19-year-old son. Yeah, and he lives with his mother in a different city. But with my wife now, I've got two young kids. I've got an 8-year-old daughter,
okay,
and an almost 3-year-old boy who's downstairs at the moment. He's just started to moan. Sorry.
No, we'll just take 20, 30 minutes and talk.
Okay.
And I was telling Matt, you tweet about fatherhood a lot, which is I think very intriguing. Sometimes I feel a lot of people talk about it but don't have the experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I think there's a really big sort of void on the internet for fathers to go and talk and maybe chat and get help about things that are related to fatherhood, because let's be honest, guys, it's not easy sometimes, especially if you're a new father. And I just think that my account tweeting about that is hopefully helping people that are in that situation, that might have a question in their mind, might need a little bit of motivation to be the father that they want to be or think they should be. And that's why my account exists, really. I want to create a community where fathers can go and talk, you know, not just chatting in the DMs on Twitter or not just chatting in like comments underneath tweets. I'm actually looking at creating somewhere where people can go to chat privately, because sometimes it's not people don't want to chat in the DMs that much.
Yeah, that's interesting. Matthew, is that like one of the first questions that comes to mind for me is like, did you recognize that void out there because of questions you had and couldn't find answers? And do you think that us as men, as fathers, were reluctant to kind of seek that help in some way, you know, or why are we like that? Because I agree with you, but I wonder why you think we're like that.
Come on, you know, Matt, why we're like that. We're men. You know, we don't like to talk about stuff that involves feelings.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's true.
Especially when you're younger. I think there's a lot of younger men that are actually following my Twitter account, and I'm thinking to myself, I feel like these guys want to talk about stuff, but I don't think, like I said before, they don't want to do it in the comments on Twitter, and they're a bit reluctant to approach me in the DMs. So rather than me DMing hundreds of people, like young fathers, which let's be honest, we don't want to do it. I don't want it. You don't want it. They don't want it. So they need somewhere to talk, and I feel like that's what they want to do, because I'm getting some comments sometimes where I'm thinking, this guy really wants to talk about something else, but I can't comment on it. Can't comment on it here on Twitter because they probably don't want other people to read it or see it.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk like that in public, do we, men? That's just how it goes, I think.
Oh, there's a real vulnerability to that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's in writing and it's proof, and I think it's fabulous because there's no playbook that comes with this, and
No.
you could argue there's so many more distractions. I mean, every generation thinks it's so much tougher than it was in the past, but I think there's a little truth to that. There's so many more things going on, right?
Yeah.
That you can control or not can control, but it makes it really tough. And any type of guidance or maybe somebody just affirming that you're doing a good job. I mean, that could be the case too.
Yeah, there's a lot of distractions in today's world, isn't there, guys? It's not easy to focus on sometimes not easy to focus on what you should be doing on a daily basis. Not just online, but just in general life. Life's got so much busier over the last 20 to 30 years for everyone, especially the younger guys. And I think they struggle. I do think they struggle quite a lot.
Matthew, what do you think is the biggest, or some of the biggest, doesn't have to be one thing, but some of the biggest struggles these fathers are having?
I think because people are so busy, I think they struggle with, actually, it's not just spending time with their kids. I think they do struggle with that, and for obvious reasons, for time constraints. But I think it's actually having a routine. People that I meet these days that are not of my generation or of our generation, they don't seem to understand how important a routine is for children at all. And I see a lot of behavioural problems with their children. And I always think about it. I observe them because I'm an observer. You know what I mean? I like to observe people. And I observe them and I think, if your children had a routine, after I've met people several times, if they had a routine, they probably won't be having these emotional problems that I can see coming out in them in front of everyone. They wouldn't have a lack of confidence, which creates the emotional outbursts. They wouldn't have less confidence. My children have a routine. They have done since they were born. You know what it's like when your child is born, especially your first one. You're like, "Whoa, what's going on?"
Yeah, I know.
What's happening here?
Nothing scarier.
But after the first child, after my son was born, Josh, after that, after about 6 months, I actually said to my partner at the time, we can't keep going on like this. This child needs a routine, because he was waking up in the middle of the night. He was crying. Through the day, he has had problems grasping the fact that things go wrong. I'm thinking, I know he's only 6 months old, but something needs to change here. So we instituted a routine based on what I thought might be right, which was bed, same time every night. Yeah. Meals, same time every day. Playtime, set times. You can't play when other things are happening. There has to be a certain time when you play with your children. They have to enjoy the time with you. There has to be time set aside with mum, time set aside with dad, and time set aside for all the family together. That started to work. So I did that. I instituted that with my next two children, which are obviously a lot younger. And they're great. Every time we go anywhere, everybody says, wow, your child is so calm, so measured. The things that they're saying is, how old are they? And I tell them how old they're. No. Well, yes, they are. So how did you do this? Look at my child. She's the same age. He's the same age. I can't control them. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And it's all about routine, and it works. When they try the little things, the little suggestions that I've tried, or when I actually say, can I try this with them? Approach the child in a different way. They watch and you can see the light bulb moment happening in their mind. Like, I've never thought of this before. And they try the routines that I suggest, and it starts to work. And the children are different. After a period of a few months, the children are actually different in terms of how they behave.
Do you think it's, Matthew, the children know what to expect, and there's some because of that schedule and because of that consistency and that fact that they're then confident in what the future holds, right? Even if that future is hours, not years, and they're comfortable with with the reaction or the circumstances around them, and it gives them confidence, and they don't have outbursts because of it. I'm shooting from the hip here, but that's what seems to make sense.
Yes, I'm no psychologist, Matt, Paul, but
me either.
No, everything in life comes with experience, doesn't it? When you get to a stage, when you get past 40 years of age, you kind of know how to do stuff in life, especially with kids. If you have more than one or two, you kind of know where you're going with it. And there's a lot of gaps between people knowing what to do and actually putting it in practice.
Yeah.
That's where I think where fathers like us can come into our own with younger guys who they kind of know what they should be doing, but they're so busy and they're so stressed about providing this and that and whatever else for the family, they forget these little things that are so important,
That's excellent. And I want to piggyback on what you said about the routine. My wife and I always said, kids can be an inconvenience, and don't take that the wrong way. That's what
they can. They can.
That's what comes to mind with the routine.
I think she said husbands can too, didn't she?
If you notice, she's never been on the podcast. But we go to a friend's house when they're little, and there's no empty threats like, hey, if you don't behave this way, we're leaving. And 10 minutes in, if they were misbehaving, we're gone. That's a huge inconvenience. I was going to sit down and have an adult conversation, my wife and I, with another couple, right? And the kids can't get along and play, then we're out of here. And that's what I mean by inconvenience. The routine, it might be the day I'm tired and I just sit down to watch the ball game on TV, but normally that's time my children and I are playing and talking, or they want to go sledding outside or do something. That's the inconvenience. And I mean, you should feel like it should be a blessing, but I'm saying in your daily life, that routine can get in the way with how busy we are today, right?
Yeah, of course it can. And sorry about that. My son's having a little bit of a
That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That would be perfect for this. I mean, we're talking about being a father here.
I'm going to wait until he decides to come into the room, but it seems to be okay at the moment. Yeah, no, you're right. When you go to gatherings, it becomes obvious that people are trying to instill discipline in their children in a social environment, but they really don't know how to do it. So what ends up happening, in my experience, I don't know about you guys, but what ends up happening is the children tend to run riot for the whole time that you're there. And when you're the only parent that gets up and goes and says to your child, no, you really shouldn't be doing that. This isn't our house, and I've told you not to do these things, this, and this, and this is why. You can see the other parents thinking, no, I really should be saying that, but I don't want to be the one that's upsetting all the kids. So, well, I said to my wife every time before I go out, if, like you said, Paul, if the children are not going to behave, if they're not going to do things the way we've taught them to do, just because the other kids are doing it a different way, we have to step in. We have to keep, even if you're out somewhere else, you have to keep the discipline. You have to keep your routine. It's very important.
It's super important. And I feel more than ever today, even when kids get older and become young adolescents, parents want to be their friends, where to have a relationship when they're older, like Matt and I were on the other side of it, you had to have had boundaries and some discipline if you want that adult relationship.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent. There's a big difference right there. I hope we can have fun like friends sometimes, but at the end of the day, right? There's boundaries.
Right.
And trust me, with those boundaries, there's a lot of adjustments, because again, there's no playbook. What works for your child might not work for Matt's child. And so I think there's a lot of audibles and play calling at the time, but you still have to have the overall boundaries. And that's what I like about what you're doing and the dialogue you're trying to get out with other fathers, because how do you know if you don't know?
Exactly, and I think it's also the other message that I'm trying to get across, Paul and Matt, is that fathers really do need some kind of motivation as well, because being a father, it's a natural thing to some men, but it's not a natural thing to other men. So the motivation to keep going, to keep doing those things, to keep teaching your children those lessons, it's like building a business. If you don't do those things every day and discipline yourself to go through that process every day with your children, then when, like you say, when they are adults, you're not going to have the kind of relationship that you want. So I think men, especially younger men, do need motivation to keep doing that and to understand why,
Matthew, what are some of those things you're referring to that men need motivation for? Any examples? What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know what it's like in the US, but but in the UK, there seems to be a disconnect between living their daily life, living their daily life, and actually then setting an example to the children at the same time.
I see.
So what I mean by that is, how can I put this politely? They don't really. A lot of men that I meet that have got fathers that are young fathers and have got young children, they don't really prioritize their health. Now, this is such a big thing for kids, because if their father is setting the example as it's okay to just sit on the sofa consistently, it's okay to eat what you want consistently, therefore, obviously health problems are going to follow, aren't there? And then your children are going to see all this and they're going to think that that's how they should live too. It's so important for a father to set the example.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It kind of piggybacks on a lot of what Paul and I talked about, including earlier today, about non-negotiables and what it does for you. But as a father, as a parent, certainly as a father, we set an example, right? And whether you realize it or not, those children, they're watching all the time, everything you do. And if you're sitting on the couch and you're not, let me reframe that. If you're getting up and exercising and you're doing the right things and making those decisions, I think it sets such a fine example for these children, moving forward. So I guess I hadn't given that a lot of thought in terms of other parents not doing it, because I don't talk to groups of parents like or men in particular, Matthew, like you do. So a lot of this has kind of got my wheels turning in ways I hadn't before. So I find it super interesting. But that makes perfect sense to me.
This is what I was saying about the community aspect of it. It's taken me over 2 years to build the Twitter account that I've got, and I'm really quite proud of it. I'm actually doing a rebrand at the moment, which is what I've been doing today before this call. And the community idea is something I've had for a while, but I've been figuring out how to structure it, how to include all ages of men, not just younger men, not just younger fathers. It can't be just about fatherhood as well, because fathers also need help with where to go to find entrepreneurial outlets, opportunities. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't have to be 9 to 5 for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? It doesn't, because a lot of men do think that once they've got kids, they've got a job, they've got to stay with the job, they've got to work hard in the job, get promoted, and then what comes after that? It's retirement. And then they sit there and think, oh, where did all my life go?
What did I miss, right? What did I...
Well, that was for you. You've got us talking. I mean, we're surprised we don't talk about this more on the podcast,
because it's such a big part of our lives. But I think, Matthew, you might be onto something. I'm sure you're onto something. I think the thing is, like, as a father, you just, I got to take everything on my own shoulders. I don't talk about it. I just, you're right. There's, socially, there's something built into us, right, where we just don't do it the same way. And it's probably not a great thing that we don't.
No, I see where, for me, fatherhood is about, it's such an important job. I see so many children in my life over the last 20 years. They're just lost. And they've grown up lost, and I've seen them grow up. I've watched them grow because there's not been a father figure in the home. And if there has, they've not been present. Being present as a father is, guys, if you know as well, Paul, Matt, if you're not there often enough, even if you are there sometimes, there's just not enough influence. But when you are there, you have to dedicate your time to them. Even if they ask you a question that you think when they've asked it, man, that's so stupid. This is the reaction we get, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a stupid question. But you don't say that. You go, oh, okay. And you show real interest in, even if you don't think it's a good question, you show real interest in what they're asking you, because that's something that they're interested in. And a lot of fathers these days just don't get this. They don't get that at all. They think that they just go out to work, put money in the bank account, pay the bills, pay the mortgage on the house, and that's it. That's their job done. And sit on the sofa.
And as important as that is, that's nothing compared to being engaged with your child. You got all these things coming through my mind that I haven't really thought about in years. But my ex-wife and I had split up, and I actually moved away for a period of a few years for work. You got to talk about entrepreneurial and that kind of thing, and that's very much what I am. And I had to figure out a way to be a father engaged with my daughter, emotionally engaged with my daughter, even though I lived 4.5 hours away. And, I remember, Matthew and Paul, things like my daughter started getting into Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter was popular at the time. Well, I read every Harry Potter book there was, not because I cared about Harry Potter, because my daughter cared about Harry Potter. I remember my daughter getting involved in the spelling bee early in grade school, and I would get on the phone with her when I'm living 4 hours away, and we would go through her. I'd have her list, and we would go through. We would I'd have her spell for hours with me, And I think people are like, well, it's not that I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do it. I loved it. I was engaged in it. But those moments, I think, and Matthew, you could probably speak to this better, those things, that attitude was the way that my daughter and I bonded and created trust and love and all these other things that have helped sustain this relationship for forever. So those were some of the things that I did as a long distance father for a short period of time, but it was a few years.
Yeah, of course, man. And I think that what we have to remember, especially if you have a daughter, is you are their first ever love. You're the greatest love of their life. So if you're not a good example and you don't give them everything of yourself, then what they've been taught by their own father is what they will expect from their own husband when they grow up and they reach adulthood. They'll be searching for somebody. Even if you were a bad father, they will be searching for somebody like that subconsciously, because that's what they've seen. That's what they know, and they don't realize until they've made mistakes. Hang on, yeah, maybe my father wasn't such a good influence, and maybe I shouldn't be looking at these kind of guys anymore. But then it's too late. So this is what I'm saying about the initial influence of a father. Is so important in a girl, especially in a girl's life when they're growing up.
Yeah, I mean, just setting the example, being a role model. I find it a shame. Kids are the most naturally curious creatures on the planet, right? And if you don't promote that as a father, it's such a disservice. So setting the example, all right, a spelling bee. Matt, that was probably very painful because you can't spell. but you learn, right?
I learned how to spell refrigerator.
Yeah, no, but the Harry Potter, but like just being, there's so many good nuggets here. The routine, the being present, the setting the example, promoting curiosity. You should do it because you want to do it. I always find there's a side of me. I enjoyed some of the shows my kids watched when they were little. It brought out my own inner child, like playing with my children. And I don't think that's bad for life. It made the day fun, right?
No, I agree. There's a particular, because kids don't really generally watch TV anymore. My 8-year-old daughter Megan, she really loves to watch something called Slick Slime Sam tongue twister.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that. I trust it.
No, don't. It's basically a pink glob of goop with some ice stuck on it. But then they've got this woman behind the camera whose hands are in the shot, and she just creates the most amazing things out of nothing. And this character called Slick Slime Sam is just like there commentating and going, ooh, getting excited about stuff. You know how they do. And I sit there and watch it with her and I think, she really does like this. And actually, I really like this too. So we sit there and watch this together. It's for kids. But exactly what you just said there, Paul, you've got to get involved with what they like as well as all the other stuff we've talked about. Because if you don't, how can you connect? You just can't, can you?
No.
No, and we have it in us. Like, that's the whole point. We were children, so it's fun. It reconnection energizes you. And I mean, if you can't feel the energy around children, like as a father, I don't know what to tell you. You're not being present, right? It's got to be the only excuse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, very important. And yeah, there was something else we were going to talk about, but I've completely forgotten now.
More the reason to have you back on someday.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to talk about, isn't there, with things like fatherhood and routines and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you got, I know you got Matt and I both thinking this is a topic, it's so fundamental to a society too. It's a foundation. And if you don't have that foundation, how can you build anything of significance on top of it?
Yeah. Maybe we could talk about on the next time if you invite me on again. I don't know if you will.
Absolutely.
We could talk about the teaching side of things as well, because you're a teacher, Paul,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know what the school system is like. I mean, it's probably different, I don't know, to the English school system, but there's a lot of similarities, isn't there, with what children are taught in schools and what they're not taught, you know?
In America, there's so much regulation on it all instead of just letting them play. And that's a whole nother conversation, because I'm not the right guy to talk about that, because I have more freedom than any teacher in the country with my students. But that's another conversation, right, Matt?
Of course, yeah.
So no, hey, we appreciate you taking time out. It's crazy how 30 minutes just flew by.
Quick, very quick.
Yeah,
we enjoyed it.
Matthew, we'd like to do that again and get into some other topics on it. I think it's a super important and super interesting topic. I truly do. I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe it. So I think we ought to do that again. It's fun. I mean, again, thinking about things that I don't think about that often, and I like that. It's fun.
Yeah, and where can everybody find you on Twitter? You got to give yourself a shout out here.
Yeah, you've got obviously at, and then it's capital F Fathers, and then underscore club. So obviously capital C and then underscore as well. So it's at Fathers Club underscore, at Fathers underscore Club underscore. That's it.
We'll put it in the description too. So
yeah,
hey,
good
Matthew.
idea.
This is great. Congrats on being our first international guest, and you'll be one of our returners. We promise you. This was fascinating, and I feel like it opened up a few doors for future conversations as well.
Well, yeah, thank you, Paul and Matt. I mean, I was very nervous before I came on, but I'm still nervous. I'm still shaking.
That's great. It was fun. Good. That was enjoyable. Thank you.
Hey, hold on a sec.